How would functionalists, conflict theorists, and critical race theorists consider the issue of residential segregation? Remember, the starting position of the functionalist is that residential segregation fits a fundamental purpose of society. It helps society function, and therefore we should not try to actively dismantle it. Non-whites will work harder if they have to earn their movement. Non-whites will work harder if they have to earn their movement out of a segregated neighborhood, and this overall is good for society. Conflict theorists would consider residential segregation as a tool for the dominant group to keep the minority group in their place, to keep them powerless in society. To allow the non-white groups access to power would threaten the status quo and thereby threaten powerful groups' dominant positions in society. Critical race theorists would focus more on how to correct what they deem to be a social problem. Critical race theorists would understand that residential segregation is serving the interests of the powerful and that it's in their interest to maintain that social order. So, in a nutshell, why does residential racism exist? It has such historical roots and it is so widespread that it is often seen as a natural state of urban life. We tend not to question why it exists, but after discussing the history of the various policies, from the Homestead Act to the GI Bill, to understanding how redlining and restrictive covenants have worked, we now know that it's a policy-driven issue. It did not happen on its own, but rather developed and stayed entrenched in society due to policies and laws that benefited privileged and dominant groups. We also know that low-income housing credits, the tax credits that were created to encourage investors and real estate developers to provide low-income properties to low-income families, has helped to perpetuate continued segregation and inequality. And that concludes our chapter on residential segregation. Next up, we're going to be looking at the issue of economic inequality.